Hi everyone, my name's Christopher. I work at the Ann Arbor District Library. Welcome to our Natural Dyes program. We have a lot of staff members who are going to show you how they've dyed various things, and it's going to be a really good program. What I decided to dye was rice food. Other people are going to be dyeing fabrics and things like that, but I thought it'd be fun to try this really simple experiment with rice. So what I have here are 6 different colors of rice, and I have 3 main dyes up front. So I dyed the red rice with beets, the yellow rice with turmeric, the purple rice with purple cabbage, and then I derived these colors here, and I have our regular undyed rice in the middle. The orange, of course, is made by combining the red and yellow dye. The green is made by combining the blue and yellow dye. And the blue dye is derived from the purple by adding baking soda. So what I did for each of the 3 main dyes, I boiled 3 cups of water, and for the beets, I added 2 smallish beets, medium to small size, and I chopped them up and put them in the water. And then for the turmeric, I have about 3 fingers length of turmeric that I sliced up really well and as fine as I could. And for the purple cabbage, I only used half a purple cabbage, but I think I would use a whole purple cabbage just to get a little bit of a deeper dye. So as these are boiling in the water, I boiled them about 15 to 20 minutes, and you'll see that the coloring is really coming out of the food and going into the water. When I say boil, I brought it to a boil and then I reduced the heat for a little while. So it's about 15 to 20 minutes, and you'll see the water becomes quite dark. Then I just strain the what I've got on the stove, and I end up with the dye. To get the blue, I added 1 teaspoon for 3 cups of the purple dye. So because I only made 3 cups of purple dye and I needed some purple, I cut the purple dye in half and added half a teaspoon. And the change is quite sudden. You can see the purple immediately turn to blue. I couldn't capture it very well on film, but it is quite amazing to see. And that's everything. So it was a lot of fun. It's easy to do. And if you're wondering whether the rice tastes like the dye, yes, it does. The red tastes like beet rice. The yellow tastes like turmeric rice. The purple tastes like cabbage rice, and so on. So have a great time. I hope you have fun experimenting with the natural dyes.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I am going to show you how to dye little wool swatches like this using avocado and a mordant. A mordant is a way to fix the color onto fabric. I'm going to use alum today, which is easily available in any grocery store, and avocado pits are in the big pot simmering, along with the alum and water mixture in front of it. This is a very simple, very easy to do project. I am lucky enough to be able to use my coworker An's extremely awesome setup here, and she's actually also walking me through it. So you will see her in the exact same space in a different segment of this video. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw these wool swatches in. It's just felted wool. I tried to find something that wasn't dyed. I think I might have done that here, but if not, we're dyeing a darker color on top of a light one, so it should be okay. So I'm just gonna go ahead and throw these in. and they'll simmer for about an hour. So I'll touch base with you in just a little bit. All right, so our wool has been fully mordanted and it has cooled to the point where I can handle it. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the pot and transfer it over to our dye baths. I'm just going to pick these up, squeeze them out a little bit, try to get as much of the mordant solution out as I can, and then just drop them in the dye bath. Okay, so the wool has been in the dye solution for about 15 minutes. I'm going to take one out just to see what we're dealing with here. We are starting to get this lovely sort of salmony pink color going. Okay, so our wool has been in the dye solution for 15 more minutes. And yeah, sure enough, it is a little bit more pink. It's definitely absorbing the dye at a slower rate than it was right at first, but I think it's noticeably pinker than our first sample. So I'm going to put it in its little water bath, let it cool a bit, and 15 minutes from now we're going to try the next one. So it's been another 15 minutes, and yeah, you know, the more time that passes, the less dye is being absorbed into the wool. So the differences between these swatches are getting more and more subtle, but as you can see, it is getting pretty pink. And we are going to let all of these samples dry, and then I'll meet you inside and we can look at what the results look like. Okay, welcome to my home. It is the next day. I gave my wool a chance to dry overnight, and this is what the end result was. I have an undyed sample here just to give you a point of reference, and then this is the piece we took out after about 15 minutes, this one 30, and then this one we pulled out after 45. I know it's a little hard to tell with this camera in this lighting, but they do get gradually darker as they move through time. Definitely the first 15 minutes got the most bang for our buck. There was just a huge amount of dye absorption there, and then less and less as time went on. The solution to this, and this is what An recommended and what I'm going to try to do next time, is to just give it more time, to start earlier in the day and just let the fabric simmer in the dye for hours. And at the end of the day, you could just turn off the burner and let the pot, the dye, and the wool cool overnight, and then rinse in the morning. I'm definitely going to try this one again. I thought it was super fun and also really informative, and I really hope that you got something of value out of this too. Special thanks to An and Christopher for making this happen, and thanks to you for watching.
Hi everyone, I'm Heidi, and welcome to my backyard. Today I'm going to show you my experiment with solar dye. So solar dyeing is just working with the heat of the sun to warm the dye bath. It's a much slower process than it would be to cook the materials on the stove. I'm using a wool fiber material, and it is sitting right now in a bath of alum water with some cream of tartar. So that is the mordant, and the mordant is what helps the dye, helps the fiber absorb the dye, and also can do things to affect the color of it depending on the material and the mordant. So there's chemistry there. So this is kind of a little simpler way of going about it. Like you can pre-mordant your fibers, which means you have to boil the solution on the stove and be very careful with temperatures with putting your fiber in there and keeping it only for a short time. But because the sun is basically working as the stove and it's a longer process, it's okay to just put the mordant right in the solution. So that's what I decided to do today. I have a lot of different materials that I wanted to play with. It's getting towards the end of summer here, so there's a lot of stuff that's been growing. I'm just going to try some spearmint, and I have some sage here, a lot of hibiscus flowers, and these are mostly dry. I've been collecting them for a while because only a few bloom at a time. So it was a process of, saving up those flower petals. A lot of this stuff I just cut fresh today, which is a great thing to do with natural materials. But sometimes, you want them dry. It's a lot to discover with this. So without getting too deep, right? I also have some goldenrod. I have some lovely zinnia flowers. We'll see what happens with that. And then I also am going to honor this poor sunflower. Some critter climbed to the top of the stalk and took the head down. Uh, Seeds aren't really, I don't think they were really fully ready to eat, but anyway, it tried. So I found the remains and I'm going to put them in one of these dye baths. Okay, so I'm working with just a glass jar and mason jar. Typically would probably have a little bit larger of a jar, but difficult to find jars this time of year because canning is a very popular activity towards the end of summer, so I just kind of work with what I have. So I think it's going to be okay though. Typically, you know, I think you'd want it to be able to move a little more freely. So I just started this one a couple minutes ago. This is just the wool fingering yarn with the hibiscus, and you can see already that color is starting to bleed into the solution. And just show you how I'm going about doing this. So I'm going to take this off, carefully pull up my yarn, and just place some of these flowers in here. These are the goldenrod. Bees are loving the goldenrod. Just taking some pictures of that this morning. Lots of different kinds of bees and bugs buzzing around on there. And then I'm just trying to put this in, folding it in so that it won't get too tangled. And now I'm going to push that down in there. And I put some more in here. Now, a lot of times you do weigh the amount of dye plant material that you're using. Usually use the same amount per weight as you do have fiber. Each of these hanks of yarn are 50 grams. I did weigh the materials, but again, it's a little looser process with doing the solar dye, so I'm taking notes, but I'm not being really specific about like limiting how much I've used. So that's probably actually more like almost 100 grams of goldenrod that's in here. And just put that in there. And now these are going to sit in the sun. Each day I'm going to come out, check on them, kind of do that. And it'll take probably about a week. And we'll see what happens after that. All right, so I also have this yarn that came dyed this color. It was a commercial yarn. And I didn't really care for it. It's a much paler color when it's not wet. I don't know how well you can really see it. So I thought I would just try over dyeing it and see how I can change up the color. And I'm going to use the hibiscus flowers with this one because I really like purples. And we'll see what happens with this kind of orange, how it takes on this purpley red color. All right, so it's been about 2 weeks that the jars have been sitting, and for the first few days it was going great, and then we got about probably 2 or 3 days of rain and overcast skies. Sort of got sunny, then we had a lot of smoke coming into the atmosphere, so that was blocking out some of the sun's heat as well. And what I really need for this project is heat. So it's not so much the brightness of the sun, but needing the sunlight's warmth. And so I haven't really been getting that much, so it's just been taking longer, but it's fine. And they're probably going to still sit a little bit more, some of them, but I thought I would check in today to see where we're at. Here is one that had the hibiscus petals in it, and I just yesterday took those petals out. They were turning into this clumpy sludge. They were pretty much expended as far as what the petals were going to release for the color. But I'm still waiting. I mean, it looks beautiful red, but the fiber, it's getting a little more pink today. I actually added a little more alum to my solution because I thought maybe I just didn't have enough mordant to help bring that color into the fiber. So hopefully with a few more days, if we can get some nice warm sun, that'll get a little more pink, because it was looking just kind of like a beige, which was a nice color, but I wanted something else. Then I had a jar with spearmint. I ended up taking the spearmint out because it just didn't seem to really be doing much. Spearmint can take longer, but especially because I wasn't getting, if it was July and I had a lot of days that were in the 90s, that heat, it probably would have worked a little bit better. So that's not the jar. So I had switched out in that jar. I put in some thyme and some rosemary from the garden. And still smells pretty good. Hasn't gotten real funky. And it's pale, but there is some color change to this yarn. But it hasn't been in there as long as the other ones. This one's probably only been about a week. But again, it's like I can just feel touching it how nice, and it's very cool. not nice. I want it to be hot. But anyhow. So what I'm going to do with a couple of these is add a little bit of iron mordant, and very little bit because it can react very strongly to a solution. And all I did was take some rusty bits of nails. Actually had a binder clip that had been outside that was all rusty, so there's just a bunch of stuff in here with some vinegar and water. And it's been sitting for about 3 weeks now, so I've got some good iron water. This can be used for painting as well. So it's a natural dye in and of itself, a natural pigment. Probably start just with a teaspoon. Maybe two. Do 2 teaspoons. Mix that around in there. See if that'll liven things up. And now the results from the solar dye experiment. And we'll zoom in here on the yellow, which was, these are the 2 skeins of yarn that were in a goldenrod dye bath. It's a DK weight yarn, so it's a nice thick and it's kind of fluffy merino wool. And it's not a consistent coloration, due in part to the fact that there wasn't a lot of circulation in the jar. It was a little bit too small of a container for the yarn to really move around. But I like how it has a variegated appearance, so I'm interested in seeing how that ends up knitting up in a project. So really great success, I'd have to say, with the goldenrod. Now moving over to here, it's unfortunate I'm using a phone camera, which isn't going to pick up a lot of the color, so these probably look really tan. But this is the one that was in the sage, and it definitely has a sage green hue to it. I had added a little bit of an iron mordant to it to help bring out some of that color. And then this is the one that was in with the rosemary and thyme. And it didn't spend as long in the dye bath as the other ones, so it's a little bit paler as well. It could be paler for other reasons. Again, it was an experiment. So I find it pleasing though. It's a nice subtle tone. Now, over here I have the fingering weight yarn, and the results from that. So this one right here in the middle was in the hibiscus dye bath, and some of the areas you'd see it's kind of got a bluish hint to it. It didn't really come out the pink that I was, hoping for, but it's still nice. This one on the left had the goldenrod and hibiscus blended together. And so there's some areas where the hibiscus flowers were set against the fiber, and you can see it's a little bit darker there, and a little more golden where it received the goldenrod. As I kind of twist it, you can see the differences in tone. And this last one is the one with the zinnias, a nice pale, very buttery yellow. And the last one I have to show is the one that was started off with this coral color and kind of toned it down by having it in the hibiscus dye bath. So I really do think that came out nicely to tone down what I thought was just a little bit too pink. And thanks for joining me on my journey of experimenting with the solar dye bath using natural plant materials.
Hi, my name is Ksenia, and I'm a desk clerk at the Ann Arbor District Library. I want to tell you how I made my own oil paint from rocks. I began by gathering rocks which I considered suitable for the job. Rocks that were suitable for this project were those that were highly pigmented and soft enough to crush pretty easily with first a hammer and then an iron mortar and pestle. So this was my collection that I began with. And it ended up being a pretty laborious process, so I ended up with fewer colors than shown in that photograph, but with saturated ones nonetheless that I'm very happy with. So I began by taking those rocks and separated by color, placed them in their own separate bags. Plastic bags work fine. I would say that cotton would be best just because the jagged ends of the rocks, which you'll produce by hammering on them in just a moment, will cut holes in the plastic. Cotton typically lasts a bit better and it holds up a bit more underneath the sharp edges of these rocks. So I placed them in a bag, wrapped up that bag in a cotton cloth, so to create a double layer of protection between yourself and these stones, and also to capture the crumbles of rock that you're going to be forming with your hammer. I put on my safety goggles, got my hammer, and broke apart the stones just enough to make them fit into my mortar, which is made of iron, and I then used to crush into a much finer powder. After I crushed them into a finer powder, I started seeing the consistency of that I wanted in some of the mixture. And the consistency I want is something akin to cornstarch. It's going to be really fine, which shouldn't be an issue if the stone is soft enough. So as soon as I started seeing this kind of floury cornstarch consistency start cropping up in each batch, I sifted the rocks and extracted the finer pigment, the finer mica pigment, and continued to crush the larger portions. That way I didn't get the finer pigment in the way of the larger rocks. It didn't take up space. So I just kept on going with that process. I crushed, I sifted into a different container, I crushed again until I got a uniform mica pigment powder that was the consistency of flour or cornstarch for each color that I ended up using. The next portion was pretty straightforward. Again, I just placed the mica powder into a little bowl and I started dropping some linseed oil, just drop by drop, and mixing continuously with a small stick until I got the consistency I wanted. And this consistency was that of an oily paste. So something that a paintbrush could easily pick up, but wouldn't drip off the brush. So I could use a palette knife, for instance, to paint with this, or I could use a paintbrush. But again, something that isn't particularly runny. And all I did was use the fine mica powder, which I had crushed and sifted. Again, it was laborious, but very worth it. And I then added some oil, mixed it up to the consistency I desired, and that's pretty much it. I would love, love, love to use this pigment powder for another kind of paint. I think I will try my hand at oil pastels next time around, but here's the maiden voyage of my oil paints made from rocks.
Okay, so I have my little station set up with the paint, and I'm just going to
paint something really simple. See if my Art 101 training has been retained. How about a sphere? Go for a sphere. That high-pitched whining you hear in the background is something that my dog does every time I don't pay attention to him. Westy says hello. What a good boy. All right, and I'm going to use the end of my brush kind of like a mock palette knife. Do a little leaf. And so I've played around with doodling a little bit with this paint, and what's nice is that it will dry and stay, especially if you use some fixative. Chunk here. So spreads easily. I'm thrilled with how it works. And I'm looking forward to finding more beautiful stones that will give me some more colors. Voila! Homemade oil paint.
Welcome to 50 Shades of Red, the courtesy of Madder, a very ancient dye plant. Many natural dyes will have different colors depending on which material you dye. There's also another way you can get different shades, by using different mordants. To get 50 shades on wool with one dye plant, we're using 5 different mordants: none, alum, tannin, iron, and copper. We're also using white and gray yarn. You will also see that some of these mordants do color the yarn a little bit before it's being dyed. So doing these 5 different mordants, we now have 10 different colors, because we have 10 different yarn. We have 5 white and 5 gray yarns, we have 5 different mordants. So now we have 10 colors, but that's 40 short of 50. How do we get the rest? We apply an afterbath that will change these colors. The 5 most common after treatment is none, acid, usually in the form of lemon juice or distilled vinegar. Alkali could be either washing soda or baking soda. Copper is again the same solution we use for mortaring, and so is the iron solution. They all change the color in different ways. Looking closer at the samples, we can see all our 50 shades. So this is the first of 10 shades with no mordant, with the 5 different afterbaths, no modifier, acid, alkali, copper, and iron. And then we can compare it to the next 10 colors that are the ones that are mordant with alum. And then we have tannin, 30, copper, 40, and last but not least, iron, 50. That's how we got our 50 shades of red, because we have 25 in the white yarn to the left and 25 of the dark gray yarn to the right. And you can see how Madder actually gives pretty good color on no mordant at all, but to get the truly red ones, you have to use alum. Afterbath will change the colors. You can see how the copper and iron darkens it. You can see also how the alkali makes it more maroon for each of the different mordants. And you can see how purple it gets with the iron one. So that is all our 50 shades of red, courtesy of Madder, with 5 mordants and 5 afterbaths. Thanks for today.